The argument can be made that Aetherdrift is one of the most hated sets ever released in Magic. Granted, I wasn't around for the 90s or the 2000s, but at least early or modern Magic, I have never seen a set as hated as Aetherdrift. When the announcements and hype came out, I wrote the set off as something that wasn't for me. However, it wasn't until I saw just how unpopular it truly was that I gave it a second shot and read through every single card. I tend to like these unliked sets for a particular reason that I just call myself unpopularity arbitrage. And what I mean by this is when a set is unpopular, most people don't take the time to look through the cards in the set and actually read them. As a result, there tends to be like a lot of hidden gems that people don't know exist because nobody else is playing them in their games. Now, don't get me wrong. From a value perspective, this set is awful. Like, I opened a collector booster box and several finish line bundles, and yeah, I'll just say you don't buy the set with the intention of making your money back. I did it for my personal collection and the fun of it and to play with the cards that I opened, but from a playability standpoint, there are so many cards that I slot in my commander decks, and that's what we're going to cover today. Some of the cards that I think are slept on and excellent from this set. So the first one that we will cover and the most popular card today is Defend the Rider, which is in 15,224 decks. This is a 1 green instant that says, choose one. Target permanent you control gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Or create a 1/1 colorless pilot creature token. With this token saddles mounts and crews vehicles as though its power were 2 greater. So yeah, in terms of green protection, Heroic Intervention still reigns supreme because it covers your entire board. But in terms of targeted removal, I think this one has really taken the edge for my favorite. It's great that gives the best evasion and protection keywords for a single mana, or it can create a body at instant speed to block. So in terms of, I'd say, one-to-one comparisons, the closest one that comes to mind is Tamiyo's Safekeeping, which is in 12 times more decks with 188k. But I would rather take the ability to create a body or a blocker instead of the 2 life. And the reason why this is the most straightforward is because both of them say target permanent. Other great cards are like Tyvar's Stand, but that is specifically for creatures. And Snakeskin Veil is another popular one, but that only grants hexproof. I like this more, like I said, I slot this one before I do Tamiyo's Safekeeping now. I like the ability to choose what I want to do. And yeah, if you are playing vehicles, which are gaining in popularity, then this can crew as if it had power 3, which is super nice, but in more niche cases. Demonic Junker is our next card and is in 13,288 decks. This costs 6 and a black for a 4/3 vehicle with crew 2, but it has affinity for artifacts, so this spell costs 1 less to cast for each artifact you control. When this vehicle enters, for each player, destroy up to 1 target creature that player controls. If a creature you controlled was destroyed this way, put 2+1/+1 counters on this vehicle. So yeah, this is an excellent card for artifact decks, which are just so much more common and abundant these days, which means that this card is effectively a 1 black mana 3-for-1, but there's the ability to create kind of like a 4-for-1. So what I mean, 3-for-1 is you get to kill up to 3 of your opponent's creatures, 1 for each of them. And the fourth aspect is you could use it as like a sacrifice outlet. You're not sacrificing it, but you're destroying one of your creatures to get a bunch of a death trigger, which can be good too in black decks. And if you do happen to kill one of your own creatures, a 6/5 vehicle that has just crew 2 is a great power to crew ratio. And so I think this is an excellent 3-for-1 spell that can cost as little as 1 mana in the right decks. Another slept on card from this set is Serpent Seeker, which is in 9,485 decks. This costs a green and a blue for a 1/1 snake with flying and death touch, and it has an exhaust ability that costs 4 and says, Reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal 2 land cards. Put those land cards onto the battlefield tapped and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Activate each exhaust ability only once. So in terms of keywords, this card is excellent. I don't know if anyone ever plays Baleful Strix. Yes, I do know it's popular. So if you ever have played that, you know that a flying Death Touch creature is an absolute wall. People would rather swing into so many other creatures than a 1/1 flying Death Touch blocker. Because yeah, they are set to lose so much more than you because yours just costs 2 mana. They have to choose to swing at someone else or accept the fact that you are going to kill their attacker. The other thing that's really nice about this is it curves pretty well. You cast this on turn 2. If you had something on turn 3 that on turn 1, then on turn 3 you could activate this ability. And what's really nice about it from a ramp perspective is that it can put any land type onto the battlefield, not just basic lands. And so if you're playing with all of the busted lands, then yeah, if you roll into it, then this can put those lands onto the battlefield. This also works great with bounce decks. And so if you're playing anything like Conjurer's Closet or Thassa, then you can activate that exhaust ability every turn because this is a new game object. And so it doesn't remember that you have already used the exhaust ability. So if you do have the mana to throw that around, then yeah, this is a recurable ability to but put 2 lands onto the battlefield every single turn. And the last part of the exhaust ability is it does put a +1/+1 counter on it. If you are playing a counter deck, that can be nice, but not necessarily relevant for most other decks, changing it from a 1/1 to a 2/2 flying Death Touch blocker or attacker, because people are still not going to, you're still going to dissuade attacks if it's 1/1 or a 2/2. Another green card that I really love from the set is Thunderous Velocipede, which is in 8,708 decks. This costs 1 generic and 2 green for a 5/5 vehicle with trample and crew 3. It says, each other vehicle and creature you control enters with an additional +1/+1 counter on it if its mana value is 4 or less. Otherwise, it enters with 3 additional +1/+1 counters on it. I love this card, and I've started to slot this into most of my green creature decks. And so if I have a mono green deck, I think that this is just an excellent card, even if that isn't a dedicated +1/+1 counter deck. Because green is always swinging at people, and this just makes your attacks that much better. So I think with this, I kind of compare it to Tribute to the World Tree. I know it's not a 1-to-1 comparison because Tribute is amazing for the draw aspect, but it just feels so good when you do have Tribute on the field and you create a lot of tokens because those 1/1s become 3/3s. And with this, yeah, if you put on tokens, they get just 1 +1/+1 counter, but that same level of satisfaction of creating 5 or 10 1/1s that are now 3/3s is equally satisfying when you cast a 5 mana creature that was a 5/5 with trample that is now an 8/8. Or if you are in a dedicated token strategy, 3 counters is a very good baseline to double up on. Also, I think that the crew 3 is a little bit steep, but getting a 5/5 trampler from maybe tapping a 3/3 beast is still a pretty good upgrade. And lastly, 3 mana for this ability just feels really good. And it's a lot more playable in so many more decks than Tribute because it's not 3 green mana pips, it's 1 generic and 2, which actually makes a huge difference. And so yeah, if you're playing a counter deck or just a deck that wins via combat, I think this is a very slept on card that can buff and make a big dent on your board and what you do. Our next card is Waxen Shapethief, which is in 7,473 decks. This costs 3 and a blue for a 0/0 shapeshifter. It has flash and says, you may have this creature enter as a copy of an artifact or creature you control. It also has cycling too. This is one of my favorite cards from the set. I will say I play it in a lot of my blue decks now because it's just so much fun. It doesn't have the benefit that some of the other clones do of copying any creature on the battlefield, but I love the flash aspect, and I think that makes up for it, especially if you're playing a deck that has non-legendary creatures that are great for copying. And the reason why I love it is just people do not ever expect creatures at flash speed, like as a blocker, or if you just choose to cast an amazing creature on an end step. I think the example of this to kind of demonstrate this is if you have ever cast a Hullbreaker Horror in the end step before your turn to protect it from getting killed, but having it available on your turn with a full mana pool to reap the rewards. And the reason why that's really nice is because, if you cast that in your main phase and you don't have any mana left to use its ability, then it's pretty much guaranteed to be dead by your next turn. But if you cast it in the end step right before, then people have to have instant speed removal that hits it. Otherwise, your next turn, you got a beast to work with. With this card, if you do have that, it's the same thing. You cast it on an end step to copy your best creature on the board and have it ready and available for your next turn. It also has Cycle 2, which is always a value add stapled onto a card. If you don't have any use for it, you can just crack it like a clue token whenever you want to replace it. So as a result, that does work with some discard synergy. And, I'm just curious, what are your favorite non-legendary creatures to copy in any colors? So let's just assume that you are playing a deck that has blue to be able to splash this in. But if that is the case, what is your favorite non-legendary creature to copy? Our next card is a little more niche, but it is still one that I really like. It's Guardian Sunmare, which is played in 7,291 decks. This costs 3 generic and 2 white for a 5/5 horse mount with Ward 2 and Saddle 4. Whenever this creature attacks while saddled, search your library for a non-land permanent card with mana value 3 or less, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. Like I said, it is more niche, so I've only played this in my mount decks, but I've loved it. And I actually have put it in one of my token decks where I do have a lot of 1/1s that can help with that Saddle 4 ability. And that's the main drawback, is Saddle 4 is pretty steep. And so most mount decks have pilots or something that can activate that. But with that being said, I love this. It is an excellent tutor, being able to search any non-land permanent with mana value 3 or less and just slam it onto the battlefield. It's epic with Colodin Triumph Caster, who helps to pay for that mount ability. You just slam it onto the battlefield. It has haste, and you don't even have to mount it. That's amazing. And being able to fetch any non-land permanent is just really good. It's even better if you're playing in maybe like a red deck that can double up on combats or on double up the attack triggers. So if you attack once but double it up, then you fetch 2 non-lands, or if you have multiple combats, then you're just continually fetching those things because you saddle it once and it's saddled for your next 2 combats. The Ward 2 is really nice. So if you do manage to have a way to saddle this, then it stays on the board for a lot longer. And like I said, if you're not playing a dedicated mount or vehicle deck, you can still use this card if you do have several 1/1s or a lot of creatures lying around that you can use the Saddle 4 requirement for. This next card is the only card that I will cover today from the Commander set, and that is Priest of the Crossing, which is in 6,849 decks, which honestly was pretty surprising to me. This costs 3 generic and a white for a 3/3 flying zombie bird cleric. It says, at the beginning of each end step, put a X +1/+1 counters on each creature you control, where X is the number of creatures that died under your control this turn. I mean, is it just me, or is this card nuts? Like, it says at the end of each end step. And so, this is just an insane buff to your board, and it's just each creature you control. It doesn't say put X +1/+1 counters on one creature equal to the number of creatures that died under your control this turn. It is each of your creatures. So if even just one of your creatures dies, that puts 1 +1/+1 counter on your entire board, which there aren't many cards that do that. And this works also in a lot of tribal decks. Birds, zombies, and clerics are all very relevant creature types with valid support. Like, if this was some random tribe, then yeah, I wouldn't say that that's really relevant. But there are so many zombie, clerics, and bird decks. And so I think that this is an insane aspect from that perspective as well. This is also good with decks that create more creatures when creatures die. Like, I have a Zahura Glory's Past deck that is focused on small creatures and reanimating them. And so you better believe this is one that I will be slotting in. I think it's so good. Felisa Fang of Silverquill also goes really hard with this card in it. If you're not familiar with Felisa, she has an ability that says whenever a non-token creature you control dies, if it had counters on it, create X tapped 2/1 white and black Inkling creature tokens with flying, where X is the number of counters it had on it. So if you managed to have a creature that had 5+1/+1 counters on it and it died, you create 5 tokens. And what is really nice about Priest of the Crossing is it doesn't specify non-token creatures, which I feel like is an ability that is very common these days. And so if those 5 creatures die, then you're putting 5+1/+1 counters on other creatures. And it's just a very nice cycle that continues to buff up your board and go wider. And so it's just a really good card. Let me know if you've tried this card out yet. In what deck are you playing it, and how has it performed? I'd love to hear. Our next card is Veteran Beastrider, which is in 5,449 decks. This costs 1 generic, a green, and a white. This is a 3/4 human knight that says, at the beginning of your end step, untap each creature you control. You can also pay 2 generic, 1 green, and 1 white for an ability that says, creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. This one is pretty simple. There isn't too much to say to it. It's just very good if you have an activated abilities deck. If you have creatures that benefit from tapping or have abilities when they get tapped, then this is an excellent one for those type of decks. Yeah, it is no Seedborn Muse, but it's also 3 mana as opposed to 5 mana. So you do get that untap once. And yeah, Seedborn is just busted, but that's common knowledge. Everyone knows how good that is. This, like I said, great for activated abilities decks. This is also nice for spacecraft decks because spacecraft, you can tap any amount of creatures to station them. Then at the end of your turn, you just untap all of your creatures, and now you're no longer open to attacks, and you have blockers ready while still having stationed your spacecraft. So I think that's really good. It's also nice in something like Balin the Haymaker, who is going wide and tapping down creatures to activate ability. Balin itself is not tapping, but it taps down creatures to use that ability. And so, yeah, I think, like I said, super simple card. I don't really ever use it for the 2 generic, 1 green, 1 white for just +1/+1. That is not a good rate at all. But if you ever need it, it does have that mana sink. It doesn't say activate at only sorcery speed. So if you have wide enough board, you could activate that before dealing the damage. But just the untap at the end of the turn, I think, is a very good ability. Not too many left. Next up, we have Possession Engine, which is in 4,872 decks. This costs 3 generic and 2 blue for a 5/5 vehicle with crew 3 that says, when this vehicle enters, gain control of target creature an opponent controls for as long as you control this vehicle. That creature can't attack or block as long as you control this vehicle. I think if you've been watching this, my channel for a while, you know that I really like and really enjoy theft cards. This is another one that I love, and it always catches people off guard because they're like, what? They've never seen this before. Yeah, this steals a creature, and even though this says that the creature can't attack or block, a lot of people think that they kind of associate that with the creature also loses its abilities. No, it just can't attack or block. But you can still tap that creature to either crew this 5/5 vehicle to attack, or you can just steal a creature that taps. So if it taps for mana, then you can tap it to activate its abilities. Or if it has passive abilities, it still has those. And so it's really good. I really enjoy it. And you can also just bounce it to steal the newest and greatest creature that's now on the battlefield. A comparison for this card would be something like Mind Flayer, With this, yeah, you can't attack or block with it, but I really like the durability of having this as an artifact as opposed to a creature. Because if Mind Flayer dies to instant speed removal, they just get it back. But if they remove this at instant speed, you can at least tap down their creature before they get it back to open them up for attacks for the rest of the turn cycle. If you have abilities to double up ETB effects, then why not steal 2 creatures and have them for as long as you control this? Our next card is Point the Way, which is in 3,664 decks. It costs 1 green, and it has Start Your Engines. And then you can pay 3 and a green to sacrifice this enchantment to search your library for up to X basic land cards, where X is your speed. Put those cards onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. I really like this card as a 1-drop. It gets your engine started, even if you're not playing a deck dedicated for Start Your Engines. I think that that's one of the biggest things is people are like, I'm not going to play this card if I'm not in a dedicated Start Your Engines deck. But I enjoy this because, green naturally wins via combat. And so it isn't something weird to put this on. Like, if I'm like, oh, great, I just started my engines, but I have no way to get that up. I am going to, over the course of the game, naturally get this up to speed 4. And so I really like this card because every time that I've used it, I have been able to fetch 4 lands directly onto the battlefield. But I do understand if this is a card that people are hesitant to play. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on Start Your Engines. Is it something that you are not willing to play if you are not in a dedicated deck for getting, your engine started? Or is this something that if it does naturally align with your deck, that it's something that you'd be willing to put in? Our next card today is Skycrash, which is in only 3,008 decks. This costs 1 generic and a red. This is an instant that says destroy target artifact, or you can cycle it for 1 red. Very simple. If this was a sorcery, I wouldn't play it, but holding up mana for instant speed artifact interaction is very good, and if you don't use it, it costs 1 mana to cycle it, which is an excellent rate. So for that, it's great for discard decks. And I think it should be in more conversations in terms of excellent targeted artifact removal cards. Yeah, it is no Abrade, it's no Vandal Blast because it has that overload ability. But after that, I really like this card for its instant speed. But also cycling is just very relevant because if I don't have an artifact that I want to destroy, I'm not going to force myself to cast something that I don't need. I'm just going to cycle it for 1 mana and draw a card, which I'll take any day. Next up is Explosive Getaway, which is in 2,205 decks. This costs 3 red and a white and says exile up to 1 target artifact or creature. Return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. Explosive Getaway deals 4 damage to each creature. I really like this card. Maybe people don't like it. It's too janky, but I put this in my Cody Vociferous Codex deck. It's actually a polymorph deck where I create a lot of tokens, and then I have 10 or so creatures that I try and polymorph and get onto the battlefield. And this has performed very well every time I've been able to cast it. It has acted as like a board wipe for probably 80 to 90% of the creatures on the board. And when I did cast this, one of the times I cast this and I used Cody's ability, and then I rolled into polymorph. I polymorphed one of my tokens and got out Atali, and my deck is focused on getting as many cast triggers as I can. So Atali was great, it did Atali things. And then once that was on the battlefield, now my Explosive Getaway resolved. I exiled Atali, wiped the board. Cody actually survived because it had a +1/+1 counter on it. And then at the end of my turn, Atali came back and did Atali things again. And so if you play any ETB decks, this can be a very helpful board wipe while getting back key ETB triggers. And so yeah, I really enjoy it. Let me know if you've ever played it. It's only in 2,000 decks, so I doubt very many people have ever really seen this card. Our last 2 cards are up now. We have Trade the Helm, which is in 1,890 decks. This costs 4 and a blue. It says exchange control of target artifact or creature you control and target artifact or creature an opponent controls. It also has cycling too. Back when I started EDH around the time of Rise of the Eldrazi, I used to love playing Switcheroo. I still love playing that card, but this is just a power crept version of Switcheroo and Shrewd Negotiation if you've ever played that card as well. Switcheroo is between creatures, and Shrewd Negotiation is trading your artifact for their creature or artifact. And Trade the Helm is either trading your creature or artifact for their creature or artifact. And so you can choose which one you want to trade for. I love this in, my Is It artifact decks. I put this in my Malcolm the Eyes because I'm always willing to switch a clue token for somebody's best creature. And not to mention, it is power crept in that it also just has cycling too. And so, as always, if you don't have the ability to cast Switcheroo, then you can just cycle this, draw a card as if you're cracking a clue token. And if you do play with other Aetherdrift cards, you can exchange maybe a creature you already exhausted for their commander. And like I've said in other videos, I just love theft and switching around permanently because someone now has to waste one of their removal cards on their own commander if they want to get it back. Our last card of the day is Roadside Blowout, which is in only 489 decks. This costs 2 and a blue. It says this spell costs 2 less to cast if it targets a permanent with mana value 1. Return target creature or vehicle an opponent controls to its owner's hand. Draw a card. The caveat with this is it is a huge bummer that it is a sorcery. If it was instant, I would play it much more. But, I love this. You decide if you want to use it as a cantrip or a removal spell. If you decide that you want to use this more as a cantrip, then you can just use this on somebody's turn 1 Land of War Elves or another creature to draw a card and kind of mess up their plans. But it's also removal if you want to not use it for the 1 mana, but you rather use it for 3 mana to bounce a bigger creature and draw a card. The flexibility is nice, but otherwise, I just really like to use Repulse instead, which is instant speed, but I do like having this as an option to include in some of my decks if I know that some of my opponents really like using mana dorks or other 1 mana creatures or vehicles. That's everything that I have for this video. I hope that this gave some ideas as to cards that you could use from Aetherdrift, especially if you did open up some booster packs and were really disappointed with the value. Not all is lost. I really like a lot of the cards from here, and not all of them are vehicle based. And so let me know what you think of this video. It's a little bit different where I cover specific cards that I love from a set. Let me know if you liked this, but I'd love to hear your feedback. Either way, thanks for sticking around and supporting the channel. If you like the video, please consider liking it and sharing it with others. And let me know if there is a set that you would like me to cover some of my favorite cards from. We'll see you next time.